Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast in the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. Today, I think we are going to have one of the most important conversations I've had in the 2+ years that I've been recording this podcast. And it is a topic that is a very hot topic. You'll hear kind of a pop culture topic, and that is narcissism. But we're going to do a deeper dive into this and from a completely different view around this. We're going to reframe this, and I encourage you to tune into this, even if you haven't had some experience, and listen all the way through to the end. It's probably going to run a little bit longer this week than most weeks, but it's an incredibly important conversation around narcissism. Before I introduce your guest, though, a couple of show notes. The Divorced Advocate app is live. You can download it for Android or Apple at thedivorcedadvocateapp.com, or go to the website at thedivorcedadvocate.com under the Get the App tab. It's got some great resources for you in there, so check it out. And then the divorce quiz is still up for those of you that are struggling in your divorce. Check it out. It takes about 5-10 minutes. It's going to give you some immediate results and feedback about where you're at compared to others who have gone through divorce. And you can find that at thedivorcequiz.com or on the website under the Divorce Quiz tab. All right, my guest today is a self-proclaimed recovering narcissist. Yes, a self-proclaimed recovering narcissist. Most of his young life was spent mastering his ability to manipulate others in order to get what he wanted out of life, not realizing the emotional damage he was causing to others along the way. The aha moment came after the demise of his first marriage, and while he was dating who would become his current wife. He saw patterns begin to emerge of him beginning to sabotage his relationship and was determined to make sure he didn't commit the same mistakes. What he discovered about himself and about narcissism in general has helped him be kinder to himself, as well as show others who have narcissistic traits be kinder to themselves, so they can have more positive and prosperous relationships with others without sabotaging thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that doom countless relationships for many. Please welcome Jason Matthews. Jason.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on here, Jude. It's always fun to be talking with you about relationship topics, especially about this topic, because it's so important.
Yeah, my friend, I appreciate you being here, and I want to give a little context to the audience about our relationship. Jason and I have known each other for probably about a year now, and we work together in a business context in a business accountability group, and oftentimes based upon the work that we each do, we talk about relationships. And one of our conversations this last week came about around narcissism and codependency, and we started to talk about this. And Jason said that he was a recovering narcissist, and I am a recovering codependent. So there was an interesting dynamic and a very long conversation that we had about this, that I kind of stopped and said, hey, we need to record this. And we need to really talk about this, because we're talking about it with each other, and we've kind of done a lot of work already. So this would really, really help some other people if we could talk about this and record it. And so that was the stimulus around us doing this podcast episode today. And Jason, like we're talking right before the show, and I want the audience to know, we want to talk about this in the context of the relational dynamic that codependence and narcissists, or maybe not even codependence, but that seems to be the most common relational dynamic that comes up. The relational dynamic that is happening. And the reason why I want to do that is because oftentimes we get men, and there's probably a lot of men that are listening right now, that have a wife or an ex-wife that may be on the spectrum of narcissism or may be clinically narcissistic. And first, I would like you to just explain to us a little bit about the difference between the pop culture narcissist term that's thrown around out there and the 9 criteria in the guide that psychologists and psychiatrists use that is clinically narcissistic.
So before I do that, I just want to give a little bit of context about why people should listen to me, because I think it's really important that people understand that I'm not just some schlub. I just woke up one day and said, "Oh, I'm not narcissistic anymore. Let's record this show. Yay!" No, this is something that I have been studying probably the past 10 years, and it goes beyond just the relationships, because as a narcissist, and I classify it as 2 levels. There is what's known as sociopathic narcissism, and then there's also codependent narcissism. Okay. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So I have a background in psychology. I'm not a doctor, nor do I have a master's degree in psychology. I'm more self-exploring. I have my bachelor's, obviously, but the work that I do centers a lot around trauma. And it's helping people overcome the traumatic situations that they've been in so that they can be prosperous. And what I found is that there is a direct correlation between the trauma that someone experiences and the personal need that others have to focus solely on what they want to get and how to get it. So when you look at it from a survival perspective, it begins to make a lot of sense. And most doctors or most pop culture, they like to look at the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, volume 5th edition, in order to really understand what narcissism is. And I think this is probably the worst book to look at for any kind of diagnosis. The DSM is nothing more than a collection of codes that insurance companies use in order to find out how to bill a professional, whether it be a doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever. Basically, they've identified these labels. And as long as the doctor, psychologist, or psychiatrist uses these labels, they'll be able to get paid. That's what all it's for. There's a much better book that describes human behavior in the scope of understanding people and being able to create empathy for those that we encounter. This is called the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual, the PDM, Volume 2, or 2nd edition, I should say. And the reason why this is important, why this is so much more, I was about to say so much more better, but the reason why this is so much better than the DSM is it was written by psychologists and psychiatrists for the specific purpose of being able to help people understand people. It's not just labeling someone saying, "Oh, this person's a borderline personality. This person is bipolar. This person is autistic. This whatever." This is more of the ability to understand these are behaviors, and people are going to exhibit certain behaviors, whether they have a disabling mental deficiency or not. These are behaviors that people exhibit. And by being able to understand that people just have behaviors and understanding that when these behaviors happen, it's okay. And you can still see someone as a human, even though they have these behaviors.
Well, that's great. And let's make that distinction too between behaviors and who the person is at their core. Those are different things. And part of what I'm sure we're going to get into here is the shame around what codependents, narcissists, everybody that has a need that goes unmet, that develops some sort of personality around that has some issue at their core of who they are that then is wrapped into their behaviors. And so if we differentiate between the behavior and the who they are at the core, that's really, really important, because then we're able to approach this stuff with empathy. And that's what I want to focus on when we talk about this, and have and emphasize to those listening to have an open mind about being empathetic with the individuals that they may think are exhibiting these behaviors, because it is a behavior. The behavior is not the person, it is the behavior. So that's a great point.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Jude with a quick reminder about the Divorced Advocate Foundation for Fathers, which is our nonprofit that helps dads through divorce with legal education, free or reduced cost coaching, and mental health resources. If you own a business or know someone who does, there's an easy way to help by connecting credit card processing through our partner program. Part of the fees go straight to the foundation with no added cost to the business, and 98% of businesses are actually able to save money on their processing fees. It's a win-win. So if you know a business that accepts credit cards, get them in touch with me by sending a warm introduction email to jude@thedivorcedadvocate.com or give me a call directly at 720-255-1021.
Right. So when you begin to understand that people act a certain way because they are trying to get what they need, and whether you become or whether you identify yourself as a narcissist or whether you identify as someone who's codependent, the result is all the same. You've identified a need that you did not have growing up, or that was not satisfied, and this has become now your life's long mission to become filled, because you were never taught how to fill it yourself.
Right.
And the reason why I bring up the PDM is because this is really an important part of understanding why people act the way they do, especially when it comes to being either a sociopathic or a codependent narcissist. And that's the second time that I've mentioned that. And the reason why I say that is because I believe in both cases, whether a person is seeking out a relationship to feel whole, or whether a person is using a relationship in order to get what they need, both aspects are two sides of the same narcissistic coin. Right. They are looking for their own needs to be met. They're not really caring about what the other person needs. They're seeing that there is a deficiency in them, and their mission is to fill it. Right. And they're going to do whatever it takes in order to make sure they fill that need.
Right. And so I just want to expand upon that a little bit, which is, so no matter what, and this is what I was emphasizing, no matter what in the relational dynamic, we are always looking to get our needs met. And so the narcissist is just doing it in one way. The codependent is just doing it in a different way. And this is where I find a challenge, even as me being codependent, that we label the narcissist as bad. So it's always their fault. It is always the narcissist's fault. It's not, because the codependent may overgive, because they're maybe the ones that are more loving, maybe not as flamboyant, or whatever it may be, whatever reasons society has started to label. That is not fair in my estimation, and that really reduces the ability for us to solve these problems if you're vilifying only one side of any relationship or any side of any argument. If you vilify one of them, and so that's what I want to talk. That's what I want to hear from you. Then the origins of this, so that the dads listening can we're not going to understand, right? I'm never going to understand Jason Matthews and how you think through things and how this stuff comes up and how you experience all of this. But what I can is I can hear from you about that. And then I can try to learn how that dynamic works within my dynamic of how I approach this stuff, and then try to do it in a better manner. And if there's somebody like you who is open to understanding and working through that, then that's where you can, there could be huge breakthroughs and healing. And we'll get into a little bit later. I hope your relationship with your wife and how that worked and how you experienced in the transition while dating, and understanding your narcissistic traits, and then what you did to make changes and how she reacted to that. But I just wanted to clarify that it's important for us, and I feel like a lot of the dads that might be listening are on that codependent side, and we get a lot of guys in group that are on the codependent side, and a lot of times it's like a lot of hate and a lot of vitriol that is going towards the other side, and I can completely understand that, because I had those feelings too. But our society does not help and continue to fuel that fire. So I'm going to ask everybody to just have an open mind thinking about this from this reframe that we're talking about today.
Yeah, and it's good thing you said that, because this topic can definitely create some emotions, especially if the person who's listening to this, who has especially if they have some sort of codependent way of coping, that hearing that they have a narcissistic trait, it could trigger something. Well, and to understand that what we're not doing is we're not labeling or blaming anyone. All that I'm doing is giving some sort of context as to how things happen. And by understanding that these are both narcissistic types of traits, whether you are codependent or whether you are sociopathic, it's important to understand that this does not mean you're a bad person. It just means that you've identified needs that you have, and you are seeking to fill those at any cost. It's a survival mechanism, right? And if you look at it from a matter of survival, you no longer see it as being something that's either good or bad. It's just what you've needed to do in order to feel whole. Right.
And you're describing that narcissism as a tool to fulfill a need, whether that's through a codependent manner or a sociopathic manner. And in which you're describing as sociopathic in our modern term in pop culture would be, quote unquote, what just general narcissism is being labeled.
Right.
Correct. Okay. So we're reframing this in a different manner, which is we're breaking, and again, we're going deeper. We're going much deeper than you're going to hear on any, some of this stuff on the YouTube channel. We're talking about both sides, and we're breaking this down to really human behavior and the core of what it is that is stimulating and driving people to behave in the manners that they are. So when you say sociopathic narcissism, that's basically what classically is described as narcissism, and codependent narcissism is what's classically being called out there now as codependent or maybe overgiving, something like that. So clarify. That's good. So let's talk about that dynamic in getting the needs met. You talked about the needs not being met, and from the time that we're born, we have needs. From like the second we're born, we have a need. We have a need to be fed and to be nourished, to be cared for. And if even if one of those needs does not get met, it could be a small one at some point in our childhood, then we find ways to compensate for and attempt to get that need met. It could be as simple as not being picked up when you were crying at some point when you were a baby, when you were not consciously even aware of not having a need met, right? And so comment on that.
It goes a little bit deeper than that. One of the great things about
I knew you were going to go deeper than I was, so I just need to set that up.
One of the great things about the PDM is these minds who are much smarter than me, who were able to create this wonderful book. They identified 12 capacities that every person has. And these 12 capacities help to identify us as happy, prosperous, and contributing human beings. And from these 12 capacities, there are 3 that are absolutely important at birth. They set up everything else. And without these capacities being met, without these needs, as you would put it, being fulfilled, there's a void that is created within a person, which allows this kind of behavior to take. I'm not going to go into the full description of what these needs are. I'm going to label them. I'll give a little bit of context as to how they operate, and then I'll talk about how they either get met or not get met, and what the implications are of a person who doesn't have these needs met. So, like I said, there are 3 of them. And the first one is the capacity for mentalization and reflective functioning. And someone might be saying, what the heck is that? And really, this is just a person's ability to see themselves, as well as their ability to perceive others and understand how others perceive them.
Okay.
And this comes about because of the connection that they have with their caregiver. A caregiver I describe as someone who is caring for someone from a young age.
Right.
So it could be a parent, could be a guardian, could be a foster parent or adoptive parent, doesn't matter. It's the person that you trust most because they have been there for your development.
Okay.
And when this capacity is developed in a healthy way, the individual understands their own emotions, feelings, thoughts, needs, and desires, and know how to articulate them. That they know how to communicate those things, and they're able to gauge a pretty good idea of what other people are feeling as well.
Okay, so can we generally call that self-awareness?
Self-awareness or empathy.
Okay.
Maybe sometimes they go into the lines blur with that one, because in order to have empathy, you have to have some sort of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it goes into a little bit of both of that. So
okay.
By being able to understand how we feel and gauge how other people feel, we can have a really good understanding of how we work in the world and what we need to do and what other people need to experience in order to develop healthy relationships.
Right.
So go ahead.
So on that one, if there is a lack of that, okay, you're getting to that. I'm setting you up. So we did not script this, I promise it.
I love how conversations between us flow sometimes.
Yeah,
it's
great. It does.
So when a parent is unable to provide the kind of empathetic connection with their child needed, things go off the rails. And the way that a parent provides that kind of empathetic connection is by reminding that child that they understand that this child is a independent human being who is going to develop their own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs independent from the parent. Mm-hmm. And I have found this to be violated so often because you hear parents say, my child, my child. I brought you into this world. I can take you out. It's almost like there's a sense of ownership that a parent has over this child. And if you think about it, it's almost like they're talking about slavery mm-hmm. or different indentured servitude. I mean, sure. it could be seen as that egregious because the parent is believing that this child is an extension of them instead of honoring them for having their own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, as well as their own desires and motivations. Right. There's a great book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And in it, he talks, there's a passage about children. And he says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of light longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. You can house their bodies, but not their thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You can give them your love, but not your soul, for their souls live in the place of tomorrow that you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You can strive to be like them, but you cannot make them just like you. And when a parent understands this and embodies this, they give the gift of autonomy to their children. Right. And without that autonomy, a child is always feeling like, where do I belong in the world? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I fit in? Yeah. And this can strip a person of their ability or rob a person of their ability to create their own identity. Yes. And I definitely identify with this so much because I feel like this is something that was robbed from me. And when I think about it, I get very emotional because it's something that I still struggle with. How am I supposed to really interact with others when I don't know who I am? Right. And so when that happens, a person is going to search for a way to understand themselves by really understanding how other people tick and then wanting to get as much from them as they possibly can. And I think that this thing, when it goes off the rails, creates more of the sociopathic narcissist or it could create codependence either way. Yeah. Because they're struggling to understand how they operate in the world by understanding how they operate with their partner.
Yep. So let's talk about that for a second. And if you're willing to be vulnerable with this and talk, I'd like to talk about it from your perspective as a recovering narcissist and my perspective as a recovering codependent, because I think that's important for people to hear. And I can share that that I struggle with that too. And what you said and what you described from a mother that did not allow that autonomy, that had filled my head with very specific things. Mostly, she had significant issues around men. Her father was abusive to her mother. It was very difficult and challenging in her youth, and so that got projected onto me, which caused all kinds of misunderstandings around my masculinity, of who I was. Just what you described. And I spent most of my adult life trying to understand that through relations, right? Through relationships and through understanding that, and through seeking relationships with women that were going to help me to get the need met, which was what you described, of understanding that self-awareness, that empathy, that mentalization of who I am at my core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And boys have their mommy issues and girls have their daddy issues. Mm-hmm. And this actually goes specifically to this, because as men, we are looking to our mothers to understand what does a healthy relationship look like? What do I need to look for in my partner that is going to let me know that I am able to give them what they need as well as get what I need in return?
Right.
And without that healthy dynamic, we become hyper fixated on mm-hmm. understanding what another person or how another person operates.
Right.
Because we're going to be using that to understand how we can get what we need. Right. It's no longer about creating a co-regulating relationship between two people.
Right.
It's about a person who has a severe lack of emotional stability or emotional confidence, and identifying the places that they can look to satisfy that, even in a small degree.
Right. So are you comfortable sharing where your lack of mentalization was and where your need was not met in your childhood on that?
Oh, yeah.
Topic?
So my mother was very controlling, and she told me that when I was born, the first thing that she said to me is when she helped me was, "I will never let anything bad happen to you." Mm. And at first I was like, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So I was introduced to this world with trauma. Awesome. Thank you so much. Right. Because this has got to be the worst thing that a parent can ever try to give to their child, because there's no way that they can ever make good on that. There's no way that a parent can ever really say, I can make sure that I will always protect you. Because what it turns into is I'm going to be hyper vigilant in what you do, and I am going to overreact to the things that you do because I think that you might be a harm to yourself. Mm-hmm. And what it's really saying is I'm going to limit you because I don't think you have the ability to act for your life how I feel you need to.
Right.
And there might be a lot of people listening to like, holy shit. Because they probably had a lot of the same thing where they felt that kind of limitation. Right. I've talked to many men who have felt that, and they felt robbed because they had a parent, especially a mother for boys, mm-hmm. who made them feel that way, who made them feel like they had to limit themselves because they were convinced that they could not act for themselves in a way that they instinctively knew that they should.
Right. So yours was over controlling and controlling the situation, and mine was controlling the situation through manipulative ways and through filling my head with false narratives and understanding of who I was.
Oh, so I had that too.
Okay. Well, yeah. so what I would like to try to firstly emphasize with those listening is that origins can be very, very similar. Okay, so we just talked about one of the three. Our origins are very, very similar. But then where is it that I diverged into looking to get that need met in a codependent manner, codependently narcissistic, as you say, and then you went and did it in a sociopathic narcissistic way. Hey, how does that happen?
So my mother and I, we butt heads a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Still do sometimes today, but more so when I was a child, because I had a very strong understanding of who I was meant to be.
Okay.
I was meant to be bold and courageous. And my mother sought to limit me with that. And I would resist her at every chance. So my childhood was also very abusive.
Okay.
And it got to the point where I could not wait to get out of that house. And the best thing that I thought that could have happened was my parents getting divorced.
Yeah.
And I would, well, during that chaos, I found a way to be able to use one against the other, because if they were focusing on their own issues, they weren't focusing so much on me.
Got you. So you found a way to protect yourself by manipulating the situation in a manner to deflect and protect yourself.
Right. It's important that you brought that up. That's one thing that I forgot to say, is that in the PDM, it talks about narcissism as being a self-protective mechanism.
Sure.
It is a method of being able to protect and cope, and be able to move along in life without feeling like you're a constant victim. You are preserving yourself. Right.
Which is a miraculous thing as a human being, that we're able to adapt. That's what has helped us through millennia to continue our species, is to figure out ways in which to adapt like this.
Absolutely.
And so that's helped us. But now we're in a different, if you will, a different place in our world, in our society, where this is not necessarily beneficial. We're going to get into how society how is encouraging or even cultivating this narcissism in a little bit. But so to that point, then this is self-preservation. So in our childhood, so what you described is the same thing. My parents separated when I was 15. It was great. I left home when I was 17. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I needed to get out of there because I knew I needed to protect myself. At that point, I had some conscious, and so at that point in our lives, we have some conscious awareness about what's going on. We might not know exactly what it is. Obviously, I didn't know that it was codependency or narcissism or anything else. I just had this feeling that I needed to get out of here. I needed to protect myself because this doesn't feel right anymore. I had an idea like you of who I felt I was, but what I was being told was different. My masculine nature was much different than what I was being told, and pounded into my head and controlled, if you will. And so self-protection kicks in, and we need to adapt to get what we need. And what we needed at the time was to get out of this, to finally escape from this abusive and traumatic experience, to start some sort of hopefully healing process, but at least to stop the trauma and the abuse that's going on. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.